Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Misericorde Volume 2, White Wool and Snow. Let me tell you all right now guys, as of this video, I officially beat the game. And yeah, it was surprising in so many ways, because I wasn't expecting it to end the way it did, but also, it pretty much led to the fact that we're gonna get a part 3, and I am so looking forward to that, guys. So I'm gonna make this intro pretty short just to showcase to you how it all comes to a head. And yep, hope y'all continue to enjoy. Thank you all for the love and support. This has been a great game, a great second installment. I look forward to the third and final one when it comes out. So with all that said, let's get on to it. This time, however, there were no soldiers. There was no one else here. The tents the armies had slept in were all there, but each one I checked was empty. I wandered through the silent camp, oddly compelled to find someone, anyone, to notice that I was here. The battlefield was vacant too. I shed my clothes hoping it might attract attention. I tried everything I could, desperate for something to happen, but nothing ever did. There was nobody here to chase me or even see me. There was not even a hint of danger. I was alone. It was almost disappointing. I wandered the desert all alone for a while, not seeing a soul. After what felt like hours, the sand gave way beneath my feet, and I plunged into a vast ocean. It was peaceful beneath the waves, beautiful even, for a time at least. What are you doing here? The sea have eyes. Hedwig? Is that you, Hedwig? Go away. Leave. This dream is way too weird and surreal. Go away. I awoke with a start. Not even sleep was safe anymore, it seemed. Was there truly no escape? Would my hungers never be sated again? I was filled with a deep gnawing, frankly embarrassing need to take a risk. Last night had been this close to perfect, a prelude to a comfortable life of idle pleasures. I rolled out of bed aching to return to that world. I was being selfish, of course. Selfish and sinful. But at that moment I had no such clarity. The true important matter slowly re-emerged in my mind as I dressed myself. Had Flora and her friends been found? I opened my door gingerly. The dormitory hall was quiet. Finally, a door swung open. My heart leapt as I saw Adela emerging from her room. Adela! Were you able to find Flora and the others? No, we were not. She spoke quietly, with none of the verve I was used to hearing in her voice. It was a doomed expedition, I believe. The hill is steep and the vegetation is dense. Navigating in the dark was treacherous and we were risking great injury. How horrible. Were there any clues at all? None. Hedwig, do you think they did it on purpose? What, fell down a hill? They were rather adamant about wanting to go sledging. And I know Flora had tried to escape Limbarrow before. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. You don't think they just overextended themselves having fun? I think they might well have been stupid, but not that stupid. Perhaps there's no use in trying to make sense of it. Well, we can ask them when we find them. I presume it's time for the other shift to head out? I can be ready to go as soon as we've eaten. Adela shook her head. The second shift already left. I suspect they will be back before long, however. The prospects are grim, Sister Hedwig. They didn't wake me? I suppose not. Why not? I have no idea, Hedwig. I must apologize. My mind is elsewhere. I do not know what to tell you. Try not to take it personally, I suppose. Surely, I just wanted to let you rest. I couldn't bear the thought of conducting an important search with any of these women at that moment. At least 2 of them were very angry with me, and I was beginning to wonder if I hadn't offended Catherine somehow as well. Good morning. I take it the others are still searching? Indeed. That is unfortunate. Weren't you going to go with them, Hedwig? They did not rouse her. Oh. Huh. Maybe they just wanted to travel lighter. Perhaps. I felt ill. Everyone else is still asleep? Yes. I could not. I have too much energy. Understandable. Well, should we check in with the soup? Angela took care of that last night. I would prefer not to bother her until we have more concrete news. I understand. Well, if Darcy's out helping with the search, there's no breakfast to be had. And I doubt Soup will be bothering with morning service. Do you two want to go for a walk? I have nothing better to do, I suppose. Yes. I suppose a walk would balance the humor somewhat. Better than nothing. So I didn't want her joining in the search. Suspicious. We dragged ourselves outside wordlessly. The men had already gone to work by the chapel. Aside from the light smattering of snow in the air, this could have been a day like any other. You know what this feels like? I think I know what you're gonna say. Yeah. Like the morning Catherine was found? Yes. It is hard to disagree. The morning after Samhain. It was not long ago, but it might as well have been years. The days moved slower without her, haven't they? Like walking through a bog. I can only imagine. I did not have to imagine. Not really. I knew exactly what they meant. If Flora really is gone this time. Any of them really. I don't know. Perhaps it would be better in the end. What do you mean? I don't mean to sound heartless, just... You remember how Catherine tried to dream up escape plans for Flora, don't you? Only vaguely. Catherine and Flora were close. It bothered me, I must admit. Flora was enamored with Catherine clearly. Who wouldn't be? Only it developed into something of infatuation. She turned to me suddenly. Hedwig, you're aware now that this is not a particularly pious place. We indulge from time to time. Adela and I exchanged a glance. I know. Well, for the longest time we attempted to hide that from Flora. Much the same as we tried to hide it from you, really. Only for Flora's sake, there was a while where that aspect of our life seemed totally doomed. With you, it was only a matter of time before you relaxed. Had I been so predictable? I glanced at Adela again. Perhaps I really had been. Flora was here before I arrived, and I never felt as if anything was being hidden in this regard. Yeah. Well, that was after we gave up. Hiding, sneaking around, no longer saying what we wanted from each other plainly. We all got sick of it. Catherine especially, who developed a bit of a mania about it all. She was convinced that not only was it good for us to, but that we had some sort of moral obligation. I never got that sense from her. I just thought she was energetic. Oh, it was one of her causes for a while. Catherine had the libido of a rabbit and the conviction of a Hussite. And she used to say Hildegard was wrong about two things. Sex and the Jews. What did Hildegard have to say about the Jews? Nothing positive. Catherine took offense, as odd as that may sound for someone of her occupation. She had Jewish blood in her, you see. She discovered that after digging around her family history. That's not possible, surely. The expulsion happened in 1290 and... Well, Hedwig, Catherine was Irish, so the expulsion wouldn't have touched her family. And again, this was very far back in her family's history, apparently. But nonetheless, she was very proud of it. She lamented not having a connection to something she saw as integral to her own history, and did her best to research what she could. Hard to blame her. Could she read and write in Hebrew? Yes. How well, I couldn't say, but she made a point of knowing the basics. So was she the one that put in the inscription on the sword? What did Hildegard say about sex, though? Also nothing positive. Yeah. So naturally, Flora, being as nosy as she was, and the age she was, caught wind of all this. As she got older, I knew she wanted something from Catherine. And for a while, I was terrified Catherine might give it to her. Would that have been so wrong? Yes! Of course it would have been. Flora would have been married by now, surely, had she not taken vows. But she did in fact take vows. I promise I am not trying to be combative. No, you're right, in a way. Flora is almost 20. She would likely have married a man of Catherine's age and had children by now. But my distaste, I suppose, stemmed more from the fact that Flora felt more like a daughter than our peer. We had watched her grow up. I remember when she was half as tall and much less spotty. My fears were unfounded though. Catherine was simply excited to have one more person gnaw on her before getting bored. Margaret, that is a horrid thing to say about Catherine. It is true though, isn't it? It's been long enough. I will always miss her, but she picked people up and put them down at her leisure. Flora was devastated when Catherine did it to her. It made me so angry. I confronted Catherine about it, in fact. It was our one and only real fight. And it damaged our friendship, I think. I felt awful. Anyway, by the time the second or third of their silly little escape schemes failed, Catherine's attention was elsewhere. And Flora, well, I'm certain she realized that her dashing older friend was never going to look at her the way she wanted to. So it is no wonder Flora wanted to leave. No matter how old we all grew, I don't think any of us would have ever let her into the real limb barrow. Nor should any of you. I am relieved that this story stopped short of sordid. I agree, but goodness, I do feel for poor Flora. She must have been so thrilled when some people her age showed up. You would think. I do wonder if it really could be that simple. To be honest, I doubt it. We're in our own private circle of hell, and we may as well lick each other's wounds, but nobody else should live like us. Can anybody else live like us? I understand. If the younger sisters we are responsible for began living just like us, it would still be wrong, and I think I might feel just as responsible. So in a sense, I do hope that Flora can find a way out of here. Do you think this was another escape attempt? No. Well, perhaps. It just reminds me of those times. And it makes me wonder, would they cross paths in heaven? Perhaps they both escaped. They were both miserable here. Flora is miserable. Let us remain in the present tense until we know otherwise. Right, of course. When Catherine grew bored of drawing up Flora's escape, what did she move on to? I hope that was not when she and I were heavily into dueling. I had no idea that Flora felt discarded. It would explain why she became so moody. It was around the time of the dueling, yeah. But that is not your fault. Oh? How do you know? There was something else going on as well. Was Margaret alluding to the murder plot? I desperately wanted to ask her, but I dared not. Adela was here as well, and this conversation was already so dark I could scarcely bring myself to make it darker. I'm hungry. Want to pick something out of the pantry? We collected some meager snacks from the pantry and sat in the cellars for a while. Our moods improved somewhat over the course of the next few hours. We chatted idly about frivolous things. For a while, I forgot just how doomed I felt. This was pleasant. It lacked the raw thrills of the night before, but I was nonetheless lulled into a sense of comfort. This was not so bad. If Flora and Bridget and Violet returned safely, would it really be so difficult to live this way? Perhaps Charity could call one of her meetings, and we could all agree that now was the time to put our sinful excuses behind us. So what if the Bible did not explicitly call what we did homosexual or evil? Aquinas did. Hildegard did. There was pleasure enough in company like this, surely. Too late for that now, I'm afraid. Imagine how empty you would feel never touching someone again. The conversation faded into the background, and I stared into the darkness to argue silently with myself. Evil, it seemed, had won. I could fool myself no longer. I knew that there was no repairing a soul like mine. Maybe it was for the best that Flora and her friends were gone. Missing or dead, it did not matter. They had escaped this place untainted. They would not have to do spiritual battle with their darker halves after getting a taste of what Limbara had to offer. Death might even be preferable. Aha! There you are. Oh, hello. Any luck? No, I'm sorry to say. Although there might be a small hope. Oh? We found the wheelbarrow. On its own, indeed. A rather grim discovery. But better than finding a full wheelbarrow. That's right, huh? Hopefully, they're still out there then. We can only hope. We shouted and shouted, of course, but there was no response. How are the others doing? Charity and Marta are taking a well-deserved nap. Moira is... I'm coming. There she is. Did Catherine and Eustace already share the news? Yes. Not the best outcome, but not the worst. I presume we will be sending out another shift. I hate to sound cruel, but is there a reason to? Perhaps they're just gone. We called out to them as loudly as we could and heard nothing back. If they're alive, maybe they don't want to be found. That's cruel, Catherine. They could be huddled somewhere in the code, too weak to move or speak. And even if they are dead, we would owe them a proper burial. Agreed. We cannot give up on them. Never mind. I understand what you meant, Catherine. Should I come on this next shift? I wasn't roused for this one. No, Hedwig, that's quite alright. We let you sleep because we decided you should be given time to write about the situation. I just realized. Mara, did you search for 2 straight shifts? Yes, I couldn't sleep. My goodness, you poor thing. You need some rest. You might be right. So I should be chronicling these events? Naturally. This is an important moment. I get the feeling they didn't want her joining the shift because they might have done something to Flora. I hope that's not the case though. If they found her. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a way of being shunned, but this was not the time to argue. You are being shunned. Well then I shall do my best to record everyone's heroism. I'm off to get some sleep. Wake me up as soon as you have good news to share, aye? It isn't half cold down here. Why are you all here when the Misericorde has a perfectly good fireplace? God, good question. Shall we take this upstairs before we head back out to search? I have no objections. I'll be right behind you. I just wanted to ask Hedwig something. Suit yourself. The others left and Catherine waited until they were out of sight to pull me between the rows of barrels. Are you quite sure you convinced the superiors of Eustace's guilt? As best as I could, yes. You are certain? Yes. I can make no guarantees, but I fought hard for you. I know. I apologize. Gosh, you're so horrible. This must be how Damocles felt. I nodded, unsure if I was meant to understand this reference. Sorry, another one of Catherine II's favorites. A rather grim story, I must admit, but she loved using it as a metaphor. The Greeks were a rather miserable bunch, weren't they? There was some story she loved quoting to me about some mad woman who killed her children. Medea? That's the one. She always brought it up to cheer me up when I was feeling glum about, that thing that I did. She knew about that? Yes. She was the only other person I admitted it to. So I hope you can understand, Hedwig, how much trust I am imparting to you. Not to speak ill of the dead, but her passing reduced the number of people who knew the truth to 0. Now it's 1 again. I chose a good person to tell, didn't I? You can trust me. I'm glad. So, do you think there's any value in, I don't know, refreshing Soup's memory? I'm rather anxious, that's all. You don't have to if you don't think it'd be valuable. I don't know what sort of conversation you had. For all I know, the balance could be so delicate that pushing things might irritate her. That was more or less my impression, I'm afraid. I argued most exhaustively and presented all the evidence I could find, as well as some of my less concrete suspicions. I really did my best, Sister Catherine. Good. I just can't stand the waiting. I know. It must be horrible. Her face suddenly fell. The superior emerged from the darkness in front of me, and I could sense someone behind as well. Sister Catherine, I'm glad I found you. I must speak with you in my office, immediately. Superior? As I said, immediately. I prefer not to drag this out. Your Revenants, what? Be quiet, Hedwig. But you may speak when we are in my office. The superior turned around and began to march back into the darkness. Catherine looked at me pleadingly, but I had no idea what to say. Goodbye, Catherine. Never had I seen her look so defeated. There was no witty retort, no biting comment to be made. She slunk away after the superior. I could only hope that my arguments would hold, or that the bishop would protest. I wish that I could have done more, but it was in God's hands. What did you do? What should have been done a long time ago. You can't believe that. And we don't know Catherine's involved. In fact, she has a good alibi. She is a killer, Hedwig. Catherine is a murderer, and it's high time that she answered for her crime. But what about Eustace? What about the shelves? Playing pretend was an amusing exercise, but it's time to set aside childish things. You yourself admitted that you had scarce in the way of real evidence against Eustace. What interesting timing. Are you going to have Adela apprehended as well? You would dare imply that I'm going after Catherine because of some grudge? How is your obsession with Eustace's behavior any different? Because Eustace's suspicious behavior is actually related to Catherine's death. You just don't like Catherine. I don't like killers. I don't like liars. And I certainly don't like whores. Well, you likely sent Catherine to the gallows. You might end up all three of those things. How will you be able to live with yourself? Comfortably. Limbarrow is rotting, Hedwig, and both Catherine and Catherine were limbs that were better off being pruned. Don't you dare! And if Eustace must be pruned too, then we can assess. You are mad if you think I will ever want anything to do with you again. We'll both be here for a very long time, Hedwig. Not long enough for me to forgive this. It may take time, but God rewards the patient. With Catherine gone, Limbarrow will be rid of an incorrigible murderer. And we can be rid of Eustace next when we have stronger evidence. When I saw you spinning around naked and free, desperate for attention, it was like looking into a mirror. I sought to guide you, but you were uncontrollable. One day, however, you might see that I made a good choice. I see so much of myself in you. Once upon a time, I felt similarly spurned and betrayed by somebody I looked up to. Somebody I loved. But then I lunged for her throat and pushed her against the nearest wall. She was too tall for me to properly threaten, but she looked furious all the same. I never loved you. She pulled herself free and straightened her robe. I think you need some rest. What I needed was to beat her head against the wall until there was nothing but neck left. At least, that's how I felt at the time. Instead, I turned away wordlessly. I ran to my dorm and slammed the door shut. I wanted to scream. I wanted to die. I fell into bed and bawled until my energy was spent. Darkness came. Mercifully, I did not dream. It was pitch black outside when I awoke. Little dashes of snow were visible every now and then in the moonlight, but that was all I could see. No dreams? No escape. If you're feeling restless, I can think of something you could do. There's nobody who would have me now. They all hate me. Let them hate you. You don't need someone to touch you to feel alive. What are you suggesting? You know exactly what I'm suggesting. It's freezing cold. And wouldn't that feel magical? Overwhelming? A chill more piercing than any partner could be? I made a convincing argument. I stripped naked quickly and wrapped Superior's heavy cloak around myself. And as soon as I stepped toward the door, I heard a sound. Catherine's door. So then, whatever the Superior had told her, Catherine had at least been allowed to return to her room. That stood to reason, I suppose. If Angela had indeed betrayed me and convinced the Superior to give Catherine up, she would still need to wait until morning to leave. And she would have to pack her things. Gingerly, I stepped into the dorm hall. The fireplace glowed faintly, embers providing the barest amount of heat. I caught the barest glimpse of Cook disappearing into the darkness ahead of me. Where was Catherine going? Everyone would have been roused if the others had returned with news. I followed as quietly as I could. I watched as she tested the library door. It opened for her. She slipped inside. As deftly as I could, I made to catch up behind her before the door swung shut. She made her way toward the sacristy door and passed through it. Some people had all the luck with Lux. I dared not follow her inside such a small room, but I managed to catch the door before it closed. I peeked through the crack, too curious to give it up. Through the darkness, I could just barely make out the painting. Was she going to destroy it before she left? Catherine stepped in front of the painting, preventing me from seeing what she was doing. What is that? Whatever it was did not take her long. Realizing that she was about to turn around and leave, I scampered away and hid behind Eustace's old desk. I listened and waited for her to pass. Her footsteps stopped as she passed the threshold to the hall. I could hear something. Sobs? Finally, the door closed. At last she left and I was free to inspect the sacristy. I crept toward the painting. At first, it was hard to see anything different about it at all. Finally, I spotted it. A small dot on the cheek. Slowly, I began to piece together a few things. If this had been planned as a surprise for Catherine, no wonder Flora had needed her friends to help sneak around. If the original artist hadn't gotten around to painting this mole, or whatever it was, it stood to reason that Flora might miss it as well. I had been intimately close to Catherine's face many times, and it still had taken me a moment to realize what had been added. There were some details about people that we just get used to, I suppose. Things we understand are a part of a person, but don't stand out. Or perhaps both Flora and I suffer from a lack of general awareness. Neither of us were fit to be responsible for anything. Why had she done it? Why had those fools flung themselves down a hill? I sighed and left the library. It was not the time to dwell on such things. It was time to indulge. I might never get the chance to do it again, I told myself. The hallway sconces were still lit as well. Nobody had snuffed them out yet. Flora was still out there, it would seem. The stone floor was so cold to the touch that my feet felt numb. I could not stand still for too long. Inhaling sharply, I made my way out onto the second floor landing. One lap around the abbey couldn't hurt. If my dreams wouldn't thrill me, I would have to satisfy myself another way. I felt woefully entitled to a bit of pleasure. About halfway down the stairs to the cloister, I started to have second thoughts. It really was cold. My skin felt taut, and I could see my breath in front of me. When I reached the cloister, my legs were shaking. I rubbed my hands together and moved briskly. I was shivering, but I was at the very least feeling somewhat satisfied. The discomfort added to the sense of excitement. At the very least, suffering in the cold was more exhilarating than my empty dream had been. As I approached the superior's office, I felt both fear and amusement. What if she had opened that door? The pressure built as I drew closer and closer. It wasn't likely, but it was possible, and even the smallest possibility excited me when the stakes were so high. I broke away to the left into the cellar stairwell. I couldn't help but giggle. Something moved in the corner of my eye. I whipped my head around and pulled the cloak around myself tightly. I squinted into the dark cloister. I could have sworn that I caught a glimpse of motion, perhaps a figure moving on the other side of the cloister. I squinted through the darkness, but the only thing I could see was the occasional flash of falling snow. That must have been what it was. With a sigh of relief, I moved downward into the cellar. I was feeling peckish. I flew down the stairs and immediately regretted my decision. This was much too dark. There were no sconces here. I was walking through thick, terrible nothingness. It gave me the same sense of unease that the library's shifting shelves did. I turned around to head back up into the cloister and screamed. Someone was standing at the top of the stairs. I didn't have time to make out who or what it was. I just turned around and ran straight into the darkness. I ducked and weaved between barrels as best I could, holding my hands out in front of me to try and navigate the maze. After a while, I slowed to catch my breath. Who was that? Had they recognized me? Had they followed me? I crouched low and listened, trying my hardest to breathe quietly. For a while, there was nothing. I calmed my breathing down, and raw fear was supplanted with slight embarrassment. Perhaps the superior had opened her door after all. Oh no. Had she found me out? Hedwig? Oh God, I thought to myself. The bishop had seen me in all my glory. I'll be leaving with Eustace then. Excommunicated, most certainly. Sent to the workhouse, very likely. Defeated thoughts such as these bounced around my skull until the bishop spoke once more. Sister Hedwig, is that you? I was about to come looking for you as it is. You aren't in any trouble. What do you need? Only I'm afraid I'm in a state of undress. I was on my way to the latrine. Never mind all that. I shan't look, I promise. It wasn't as if I had a choice in the matter. I emerged from the barrels I was hiding behind and pulled the cloak around me as best I could. Good. Come along quickly. I require your assistance with something gravely important. He looked harrowed. Before I could protest, he was off, up the cellar upstairs. As we approached the superior's office, I noticed that the door was still open. Did something happen? Yes. He continued toward the office. My heart was beating so hard that I could barely hear anything else. When we approached the door, he ushered me inside first. Oh, that's not good. It was nearly pitch black inside the room, save for a small candle on the superior's desk. We entered the room, and the bishop closed the door behind us. Ah, Hedwig. Thank goodness you're here. It was so dark that I couldn't make out her shape. As the candle flickered, her face and hands were illuminated just for a moment. Thank you for collecting her so quickly, Richard. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Hedwig. You've done very well to come when called. He tells me that as long as you're here, no other harm will come to Limbarrow. Who? The devil, Hedwig. The candle flickered again, and I saw the blade waiting behind the superior. No! Richard, The sword plunged down her back. I tried to run, but the bishop was already holding my arms behind my back. Let go! Let go of me! The superior's lifeless face swung down and cracked against her desk. The candle bounced and rolled toward a stack of papers. They caught quickly, and the room was soon illuminated in flickering firelight. The beast strode toward me, blade flashing. As it came around the desk, it dipped the sword into the rising flames, and the glistening blade was soon lit. I could feel the heat rising as the monster approached. I struggled against the bishop's grip. As the beast prepared to strike, I finally dislodged myself after stomping down his bare foot. He howled and let me go. I fell to the floor and began scrambling around the room on all fours with no real goal, no real direction. I just had to move and keep moving. I heard the door open behind me. No doubt the bishop was taking the opportunity to escape alone. The beast was distracted for just a moment. I took the opportunity to rise to my feet and attempt to break the window behind the superior's desk. Try as I might, I could not shatter it in my bare hands, but I could sense the monster closing in on me from behind. I ducked to the side and the sword collided with the window. There was an ear-splitting screech as the tip scraped along the surface before the whole thing popped. My assailant staggered forward, and I ran around the room again. If I couldn't leap through the window, then I would try the door. The creature howled in anger and barged after me, pinning me to the door from behind. I screamed and dropped to the floor, a dead weight hoping to set the beast off balance. Its grip loosened and it steadied itself against the door with its free hand. It began jabbing the sword down the floor wildly as I slipped between its legs and into the center of the room again, desperate to find something to fight back with. The window was out of the question now. The shards of glass that remained here were so jagged that I would assuredly spill my guts to the edge if I tried. I scampered around the burning room in a daze in the lookout for something I could defend myself with, something I could use to drive the creature away from the door. As I hurried past the desk once more, I noticed my old workbook resting on the dust next to the superior's head. The beast lurched forward, and I picked up the book and held it open almost reflexively. The dense pages provide just enough resistance against the monster's disparate glancing swing. I stumbled backwards and dropped the two halves of the book to the floor. My notes had come in handy after all seemed. However, the book would not be able to defend me a second time. There was one thing, one single hope that I could cling to, that the blade the monster was wielding was its own. Where would the superior have put the other weapon I presented as evidence? Oh, I see it. Finally, I saw it. A flash of metal in the adjoining bedroom through the door I had seen the bishop emerge from so many times. I sprinted into the room and slammed into the cabinet on the side room. The bedspread was askew. There had clearly been a struggle in here, whenever the beast had first arrived. As my hands gripped the sword's handle, I felt the surge of triumph. It was short-lived, however, as the monster followed me into the room and began hacking wildly at me. I did my best to deflect the blade, but each time the hot flames approached me, it took all my strength not to flinch. Still, I defended myself with enough verve to be able to change position, squeezing past the monster and squinting through the flames toward the door. I fumbled with the heavy door and slipped into the cold night air, coughing as it mingled with the smoke in my lungs. I wasn't sure what to do or where to go, and I did not have the luxury to deliberate because my pursuer was hot on my trail. My heart felt as if it could pop as I flew out of the late superior's office. I could not stop. I had to keep moving. I had to get to the library. Those infernal shelves were my only hope. Up the stairs I went. Heavy footsteps followed behind me. I continued to scream for help at the top of the stairs, but what good would that do? By the time anyone arrived, this thing would have caught up with me, and it was just less likely to kill anyone who came along with me. No, I could deal with this myself. I successfully avoided before. I guess that is probably the smart play because she's right. If she did call for help, it would cause commotion, and the people that would come out, this thing here would probably slash and kill. On the other hand, fighting it alone, that's way too bold. There was a lesson here. No more salacious nighttime excursions. That was fair. I could adhere to that. I could live during the day and leave the Abbey alone at night. Message received. I clambered up the stairs and plowed through the door to the library. The shelves. Please let me in. I collided with the wall. Fuck! For the first time. I pounded my fist against the very real wall helplessly, but I could not vent my frustrations for long. I had to keep moving. But where on earth would I go? What could I do? I could see the beast now. Sure enough, it was the same creature that had attacked me and Flora, and had run into me in the sacristy. It strode toward me with big lumbering steps. It carried the sword at its side. I had no choice but to run straight past it to the door once again. I grimaced. I was good at getting myself into the same scrapes repeatedly. I sprinted straight ahead and dove forward, sliding across the stone painfully and crawling beneath its legs to reach the landing once again. I pushed myself away from it by kicking against its metal boot. When I rose to my feet, I had to steady myself against the stone railing with my free hand. I turned around as I did so. I had to assess my next move. The beast turned, and it did something very odd. It raised a gauntleted hand to its face, if it could indeed be called that, and gestured for me to stay quiet. I did not know what to make of this, but I knew that I was still in danger. I did not scream, not because I was told not to, or because I did not want to endanger anyone else, but I did run. I just had to keep moving. If I could stay alive, I had to think of something. I just needed to keep moving. I ran back down the stairs and into the cloister. Braving the snowy grass with my bare legs, I tried to get away. I dared not turn around and see how close behind my pursuer was. The sound of its metal boots against the cobblestones was enough to keep me moving. I glanced toward the archway. Could I make it to the camp? It seemed irresponsible to bring this demon any closer to more people, but I had precious few other ideas. I was but one woman who knew nothing about swordplay. The builders, at the very least, had muscles and hammers. My lungs were filling and emptying with such totality that I had no opportunity to scream. So when my shoulders were yanked backwards and my legs flew out in front of me, I made no noise. My robe had been caught from behind. I could hear the threads buckling as my body struggled against the cloth. I let go of the sword as the cloak's buckle dug into my neck. It was flung far afield. I watched helplessly as it sailed away. The superior's old traveling cloak finally tore, and I fell into the snow, free from the beast's grip. I don't understand that. The creature loomed over me, blade in hand. Catherine? The monster shook its head. As the beast began to step toward me, I felt a surge of responsibility. I could not endanger the builders or the other sisters or anybody else. Where would I run if the men could not bring this demon down? The village? They were stricken with curses already. Would I run until I fell into a ditch on the way to London? I'd set aside my duties in favor of simple debauchery. I was the reason things had gotten this dire. I could repent later. But right then, right there, the only thing in the world that made sense to me was rising to the occasion in front of me. Selfishly, thoughtlessly, I allowed pride to animate me. What are you? The monster raised a gauntleted hand to its snarled face to silence me once again. Tell me. Tell me or I will scream so loud the whole abbey will wake up. The builders too. I was nude, bloodied, bruised, and shivering. I had nothing left to gamble with, and no leverage against this beast other than the fact that it wanted my silence. I can't understand you. I just hear noise. The limping figure seemed to consider for a moment, then slowly it raised its sword. I tensed up, but the beast held its other hand out to steady me. It turned the sword toward itself. At first, I thought it meant to harm itself, but instead it seemed to be trying to cut something. The sword was far too long and unwieldy for this task, however. Apparently frustrated, the creature fell to its knees and placed the sword in front of me. What? It pulled its robe aside to reveal that under its heavy cloak it was wearing chainmail. Layered on top of this armor were leather straps. Slowly it pointed to these straps, then to its own head. It indicated for me to pick up the sword. You want me to cut those free? I bent down to pick up the blade, turning it in my hand slowly. The creature looked oddly pathetic, kneeling here. It held its robes open, gesturing eagerly at me. It continued speaking in a muffled and dark tongue. This close, I could sense a familiar sulfuric stench. I could not bring myself to look directly at this thing, and even out of the corner of my eye, there was nothing that I could see that was worthy of pity. The creature's face was nothing but bone and burnt skin. There were no real eyes, nothing to look into and understand. It just looked evil, and I had spent enough time allowing evil to manipulate me. This was all a trick, I thought to myself. I was being played with. Why was I entertaining the request of a mad beast that had attacked me many times before? What was there to gain from parleying with a monster I could not understand? I'm guessing that it's trapped under whatever chainmail and armor that it has on its person. I think it wants to be free. It wants to reveal itself. I let out a mighty bellow as I could, the loudest sound of fury I could muster. I brought my blade down to the monster's head. The horrid visage cracked open like a barrel. Bone fragments fell into the snow. I pushed as hard as I could. When I felt resistance, I began to saw back and forth. I had to be sure. I could not suffer this thing to live. I was not even sure that attacking in this manner would kill it, but it seemed to me better choice than going along with whatever little game it had planned for me. Eventually, I could saw no more. I tugged the blade out with a pop. The metal was soaked in blood. I expected the monster to fall, but it did not. It remained kneeling, its hands resting at its sides, its head slumped downward. Yeah, there's a face under there. Yep. Through the broken skull, I could see viscera. An eye bulging outward, a face cloven in two, a soul leaving its body through a gaping wound I had created. Even through mangled skin and bone, I recognized the poor creature. James? Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. What? Holy cow. James was the... But it looked like he was trapped in that suit, though. So is it... Hold on. Can we... Alright. A huge thank you to everyone and anyone who made a stock image recording or tool that was used in this production. You made this solo project possible. And now I am here. Back where I belong. Everything that happened after that fateful sword stroke is a bit of a blur. I remember a few sisters and a few builders coming to inspect the commotion. I know the fire was put out. I believe that Angela is now our Mother Superior. And as far as I know, work continues apace in the clock tower. Right away, I knew that I had to be put back in my cell, but the bishop was long gone. Perhaps he took a mule or a horse from the builder's camp, or perhaps he simply walked down the hill. At any rate, there was nobody to perform a ceremony for me, so I am not an official anchoress, but it will do. I must apologize if you're expecting some sort of revelation. This story is a chronicle of my failure, not the solving of any big mystery. The simple truth of the matter is this: I failed. Perhaps I was too slow. I was certainly too stupid. But above all else, I was not prepared to exist outside this cell. I am a prickly thing, aren't I? I harm anything that comes my way, and I stick to people like a blur. Like a burr. I cannot control myself. Not my rage, and certainly not my lust. At least now, I'm content. Me and my irascible friend are happy in here. Hello. I have my books, and she has my body. At least here, my insatiable desire for sin harms only myself. And who knows? I have a lot of time to make amends with myself. And with God. I doubt I shall ever see heaven, but one day, I imagine I might crack open one of the Bibles on my shelf and try to find a way to fix myself. Until then, I am relieved to be caged once more. Flora is dead because of me. Superior is dead because of me. And I allowed my demons to get the better of me once again, and I killed James. Even if he, too, is guilty of grave transgressions. He was asking me for help. I denied him a chance to repent. And now nobody will ever know the truth about Captain's death. There's a much grander mystery here, but the truth died with him. So, that is all. I've told you everything I can. What are you doing? Part 3, what no eye has seen. Oh, I can't wait. Okay. You know, I always wonder what this meant. Let me click it. Oh, it's the patrons. Okay. Alright, so... Alright guys, we reached the end of Misericorde Volume 2, White Woman Snow. And let me tell you all right now that... that ending was unexpected. I didn't think James would be the creature locked in the armor. But the fact that the bishop... Well, okay. I had an inkling that the bishop was somehow in on this whole little thing because wasn't it him that locked James in there in the first place? But Superior could have been either or for me, though. I didn't think she would be a part of that. And the fact that she died was, well, in itself, karmic at best. So there's that. As for Flora, I want to believe she's not dead. I want to believe that she's hurt, but she got away. At the same time, like I said earlier, I feel like the sisters might have done something to her, which is why they didn't ask Hedwig to join in on the search. So there's that. There's still questions that I don't know if it will be answered here unless I look into it some more, but I feel like Okay, let me just say overall though, I enjoyed this game. I enjoyed part 1, and I sure as hell enjoyed part 2. I am looking forward to part 3 now, and I'm glad that I believe that's being worked on right now, so I don't know when it'll be released, but when it does, I can't wait to see the conclusion of this whole trilogy, because this has been a good story. I really enjoyed the creator that took the time to craft this whole world about Hedwig and the sisters. But, I can't wait to see who's really behind all this, if we do. But yeah, guys, thank you all for watching, thank you all for the love and support, and I'll see you all when Volume 3 comes out.